Let's have a fireside chat about temporal tables and how the MADEngine can be used to implement them. Temporal tables are a database feature introduced with the release of SQL Server 2016. They are also known as system-versioned temporal tables. You can assign a history table to any of your user tables. Once done, any updates and deletions will trigger the addition of a new record to the associated history table. Thus, you can now have a history of all changes to your user table. This is all managed by the database engine, hence the name System-Versioned Temporal Tables. We refer to the user table as the current table or temporal table when it is assigned a history table. The temporal table also requires two additional columns called valid from and valid to. They are managed exclusively by the database engine, so there is no need to tamper with them. When we create a table, we can include a command to reference a history table. This will cause the system to also create an additional table with a mirrored schema to your table. This is the history table. You now have a temporal table and a history table pair. Let's now head over to the MADEngine to create some SQL scripts to create temporal tables with associated history tables. Retro computing has become all the rage, and because of this, our client has commissioned us to build a stock control point-of-sales database. What you see here is a simplified version of the database. We are going to use this diagram and the MADEngine to generate an SQL table creation script. Note that some of these tables have been grayed out, and also the text has been struck through. This is because I do not want to generate any SQL code for these tables for this demo. I can of course re-enable these entities by selecting one and then scrolling down and choosing is not used and turn that off. I only want to create scripts for the inventory entities. A clock icon is present on each one of these entities. This tells me that some sort of history will be recorded, provided the MADEngine template supports this feature. This is because I want to create a temporal table for each one of these. I can enable and disable this by also changing a checkbox, this time called Journal Me. I call it Journal Me because temporal tables are only particular to SQL Server. Other database technologies will have other methods of doing this. Let's go over to the Generate Code. I've already selected my diagram and my template for generating SQL scripts. I've populated my bookmarks and set my features. All that's left to do is generate. And this is the generated code. I'll extract it and open it in SQL Server Management Studio. So here is the generated code. We have our database here, no tables. Let's have a look at this source code. Well, first of all, it tries to create the database if it doesn't exist. Then it goes on to create the schema for inventory. After that, it creates each table in the correct order. Here is the brand table. As you can see, we have the valid from and valid to. These are date, time, to data types. So this is important for temporal tables. You also have generated always as row start and always as row end. So this is also important. And they're system times, so they're managed by the system here. To associate this now temporal table with a history table, you can see the command just here. So let's run this script. And we'll refresh our tables. And now we have our new inventory tables. But you'll see there's a little clock icon here. This tells me that it's a temporal table. And within there you have the history table associated with that temporal table. And also it says system versioned, hence system versioned temporal tables. Now that we have our tables, let's populate them with some sample data. So I've populated 3 of the tables: the brand table, the category table, and the product table. Let's manipulate some of the data in the brand table and see what happens to the brand history table. So first of all, I would like to make Sega all caps as opposed to Pascal case, so we'll run that. I'd also like to delete the MSX record, so I shall run that. Now let's have a look to see what the brand history table looks like. And as expected, you can see the old version of Sega, the old Sega record in there, and also the MSX record. If you want to get a full history, you may be tempted to use the union clause, as you can see here. Now that's fine for this example, but if we had joins to other temporal tables, the union clause will not work. However, Microsoft provides you with an alternative clause called for_system_time, and that is what I will be covering in my next video if there is enough interest shown for this video. Thank you for watching this video showing how the MADEngine can help build SQL Server temporal tables. Please like and subscribe. If you'd like to find out more about the MADEngine, please visit www.madengine.studio. If you'd like to find out more about the MadForge consultancy, please go to www.madforge.co.uk.